say what you want, how you want, where we want. I got special guests on day. Go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Yo, what's going on? Thanks for having me on, TJ, by the way. So I'm Dan Maynard, part of the Operation Domination podcast on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I already done as my guests, well, as my viewers know, I give my guests like a 5 to 10 minute ether segment. Go ahead, go off about anything you want, sports related, whether it be your favorite team or anything else you want to go off about. So what you want to get off your chest?
Oh, well, you know what, TJ, I'm going to save it because, we are going to talk about my favorite team throughout the outline today. And I'm going to take the opportunity to get it off my chest as we go through your outline today. So let's save it. Let's save it. Get the first topic first before I get into a sour mood on a Saturday morning when we're recording this thing.
All right, let's go ahead and start off small because y'all gonna find out who his favorite team is. I ain't gonna spoil it yet. Who you think will win the NFL MVP and defensive MVP at the end of the year?
Well, so I usually use this we do betting on Operation Domination, right? So I'm usually looking at the lines, seeing what we got here. And Josh Allen's by far the betting favorite right now at minus 320. Behind him, you got Lamar Jackson at plus 225, also a heavy candidate. And then Joe Burrow at plus 1,800, Saquon Barkley at plus 3,000. Saquon's probably going to win Offensive Player of the Year, so he's not going to get the MVP. Lamar's already won the MVP twice, and he won last season. So it's unlikely that they would go that direction again with the way Josh Allen has finished out the season, and he's going to play at least the first half in this upcoming game. It's hard for me to imagine it's not going to be Josh Allen by the end of it.
So why you believe Saquon gonna win best offensive player?
So that's just typically what happens, right? If you have a wide receiver or running back who has a phenomenal season, they're still not going to win MVP. Like, we haven't seen a non-quarterback win MVP in 20 years. But when you have a 2,000-yard season, they typically will give that player at least the offensive player of the year. So we are going to probably see Saquon do that. In fact, he's actually minus 500. So he's a heavy betting favorite right now to get the offensive player of the year after this week.
So I'm looking at Josh Allen and Lamar. Let's start with Lamar numbers. He got almost 4,000 passing yards, 39 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 78.0 QBR. That's basically cute quarterback rating for y'all who don't know. And then over here we got Josh Allen numbers. He got 3,700 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 76.7 QBR. So I get what you're saying when it comes to the MVP because I don't believe they're going to give somebody, I guess, what be 2 or 3 years in a row, like a Jokic NBA type with Lamar.
Yeah.
But
well, you're not factoring the rushing too. I mean, Josh Allen's got double-digit touchdowns rushing as well. I mean, I know Lamar is also up there, so that's part of it. But also, you look at the additions of Derrick Henry, and when you look at Buffalo, like, they've tried to add some pieces. James Cook's had a solid year, but really, that team has been driven by Josh Allen. I mean, they have a subpar defense. The Ravens' defense has actually been in the top 5 over the last 4 weeks. So there's been other factors, I think, that played into this, that where Buffalo needs Josh Allen, maybe more so than Baltimore needs Lamar Jackson. Although, of course, they're both heavily needed on both those teams.
yeah, well, it's the Ravens. Come on, man. We know since Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, they ain't got no choice but to be top 5. It's the Steelers that need to get back to them days when they had Harrison, Palomalo, and all them. That's who need to get back at the top 5. But Josh Allen, he's definitely more needed when it comes to, I guess, the heavy games like against the Chiefs and, teams like that. He's definitely need more than Lamar because that defense with the Bills guy is not working. That offense, he don't have to run more, in my opinion. The few games I do watch with the Bills, it's like he got to run more like Russell Wilson had to do after he lost Marshawn and all them. So like 2015, 16, 17, yeah, he basically doing the Russell Wilson way. He have to run before he get like a DK Metcalf, I hope, or a great wide receiver, even though he had one. But we don't get to all that. So, what about defensive MVP? Who you got on the defense side of the ball?
Well, again, right now we're judging off the lines. We got Patrick Surtain at minus 200, so he's the favorite right now. We got TJ Watt is plus 170, and then Kirby Joseph is kind of a step down from those two, but he's at plus 1,000. I do think getting a little bit on Kirby Joseph is interesting. Now, I think the problem that he's facing is that his defense has not been good, right? Detroit's been banged up. They have not been a very good defense, especially over the last month. They've been one of the worst defenses actually in the NFL. But it's rare, since you kind of mentioned him, Ed Reed, that you find a defensive back who has 9 interceptions, potentially maybe double digits after this week against Minnesota. So I do think putting a few little shekels on him, I do think he has a legitimate outside shot. The issue you're running into here is that Patrick Surtain, well, he doesn't have the statistics that you're necessarily looking for a defensive player of the year. But what he does have is the impact on the game. He has the PFF grade where he's been a complete shutdown on one side of the field, and that hasn't changed. So you have that TJ Watt. I don't think TJ Watt's going to win. I know he's the second candidate at plus 170. He's fair betting money as far as defensive player of the year, but he's not the leader in sacks. He's not the leader in quarterback pressures. Of course, he always has a big impact on the game, but this is not the same type of game or same type of season that we've seen TJ Watt when he has won defensive player of the year in the past. So I don't think it's going to be TJ Watt. I think Pat Surtain, the betting favorite, because of how good he's been grade-wise, impact on the game. But I do think Kirby Joseph is going to have an outside shot here with the 9 picks, especially if maybe he can get 1 or 2 more against Minnesota this upcoming week.
Do you think off media hype, I'm starting to see lately, because deals here going down a lot of sports. You think if they give it to TJ Watt because of his name or legacy or media hype, you think a lot of people going to be turned off or ain't going to take defensive MVP serious no more?
I don't think a lot of people will be turned off. Look, TJ Watt has a tremendous impact on the game. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that, especially in the run game and the pass rushing, what he does for that defense. I think he has a similar impact to a Nick Bosa, where if you take them off the field, the entire defense suffers. We've seen this before because he's been hurt in multiple games, and when he comes out, it's completely not the same defense on any level. So when you have a player who's that impactful, I don't think it's ever a bad thing that they get the defensive player of the year. It's just this year in particular, I don't think he has the numbers to really back that up.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there's a lot of nepotism going on, and a lot of these trophies given out or accolades, a lot of people getting turned off too. So we'd like to see like an unknown guy or up and coming guy or a guy who's already established on NFL defense on his team, captain and whatnot, to win MVP. So let's go ahead and move on. That was good. That was a good list though. You said some things I'm shocked by. So Washington Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. We already know he used to be a head coach, whatever. Do you see him making it again? Like as a head coach, he wouldn't get a position.
No, ultimately, I'm not. So I'm probably one of the few people you're going to find that has not been overly impressed with the Washington Commanders and what they've been doing on the offensive side of the ball. Now, part of that is because I've seen this play out in Arizona. You play that first year, it was Kyler Murray's second year of his career. And what Kingsbury does a good job of, he makes everything simple. You get the first read, you get the ball out quickly, so the offensive line, who's not very good, doesn't have to get overly exposed, and you lean on the RPO run action game. And that works, especially when you have a dual threat quarterback like the Commanders do now with Jaden Daniels. You can get away with that for a season, maybe 2. The problem winds up happening is that the longer he goes, the more defenses realize, okay, if we just take a first read and then squeeze the offense, then that's pretty much how you take it away. And that's why his tenure at Arizona disappeared. Well, he came back to the NFL after a year off. I have not seen anything different from the way he's been calling the Commanders offense to what he did in Arizona. I don't see anything layered, any adjustments that he made when that thing, went the hell in the handbasket towards the end of his tenure. So with Kingsbury, you want to look at this from two perspectives. If you want to look at it from Kingsbury's perspective, then if you truly want to have a head coaching job again, I would try to get my hat in the ring this year, because right now you have the most stock. Right now you're coming off of a very good season, and I would want to do it now while the iron's hot. If he thinks that he can go into a second season or a third season as an offensive coordinator and pick his spot, about like a Ben Johnson, like if that's what he's thinking about, it's not going to work out very well because eventually what happens is defenses catch up to his offense and he doesn't adjust. And maybe I get proven wrong. Maybe this time he does adjust. But right now, I'm not seeing anything different. So I don't think he lasts long term. I don't think he's a leader. I don't think he's the play caller of, some of these other top guys, top head coaches out there like a Sean McVay or a Mike McDaniel or a Kyle Shanahan or whatever. Like he's not quite on their level as far as a play caller goes. And then if he's not going to adjust on top of it, he's not a leader on top of it, I don't think it's going to work out long term. So it depends on how you look at the situation.
That's how I look at Cliff. So I'm looking at his coaching history. He from Texas, whatever. He was at the Houston Cougars for 3-4 years. Then he was only at Texas A&M 1 year. His longest time he ever been head coach was Texas Tech, but that's his alma mater. So that's really, how they do. They bring by that time he was known. He played in the league. He won Super Bowl. Blah, blah, blah. You know how colleges do. They just do it so then he went to Arizona. Now, I remember when he went to Arizona, I'm like, who is this dude? Like, oh, he a big time coach. I was at Texas Tech. He coached on Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, yeah, but what has he done in the league? Most head coaches come to the league, they already got a name. Now, Texas Tech was not no Bama. They were not no LSU at the time. They weren't no O State. They were just like I see that was like an ESPN top 10 team. Like it was always passing heavy. Okay, cool. That's just how they was. So when he got to Arizona with Kyler Murray, and he from Texas too, they was trying, how NFL do. They come from ESPN storylines. Well, that's cute. So when he got to Arizona, it's like he wasn't really doing anything. He was almost like top 5 most hated coach. Do you feel like at that time he was in Arizona, 2019, 2022, he was like hated or he didn't know what he was doing, it was too big for him? What you think? Like when he was a true NFL head coach.
Well, look, we've seen it happen time and time again, right? These coaches, they come from college. They have a certain system that they try to run in college. Like, right. Because remember, when he came out of college, it was all about the air raid, right?
Yeah.
That's why they wanted Kyler Murray, and that's what they expected everything to be. And then when he gets to the NFL, he realizes, well, guess what? A lot of play calling is being able to scheme up and adjust at the offensive line. Because if you're it's not college. If your offensive line can't hold up for 2.5 seconds at the bare minimum, then it doesn't matter what you're going to do offensively. And when you're trying to make an air raid system, it's kind of like the Mike Martz situation. Remember Mike Martz when he had bad offensive lines? It didn't work out very well because he's hitting everybody deep, and all of a sudden the quarterback's getting sacked because you only have 5 protecting and you're not adjusting at the offensive line very well. So I think that was his biggest issue. Now, that's something that I have seen him adjust a little bit better in Washington, because that offensive line's not talented. They've outplayed what their talent level is this particular season. And a lot of has been Kingsbury consciously trying to make sure he get the ball out faster. It did happen towards the end of his tenure at Arizona, where suddenly he went from, trying to be an air raid to he was 2 tight end sets and trying to run the football a little bit more and trying to create a little bit of physicality. That's all things that we saw him go through and that he's kind of brought over into Washington. So I think that's that's a big part of it. Ryan Grubb, for instance, up in Seattle, going from college last year in Washington to Seattle this year. I think a big problem that Seattle has had is that they're not adjusting for the fact that they have a sub-average offensive line and being able to get the ball out a little bit faster. Instead, he's still trying to make these passing concepts, which are very good, but they're deeper down the field and need longer to protect. And when you have Ken Walker back there, not Zach Charbonnet, you don't have a very good pass blocking running back. And then Geno Smith winds up getting smacked constantly. So I think that's an adjustment that these college offensive play callers have to make when they make that jump to the NFL. I don't think they quite realize in that first year.
And then after he went to Arizona, good take by the way. After he went to Arizona, left Arizona? Okay, he got fired. Let's keep 100. Arizona. Then you went to USC where the #1 draft pick Caleb Williams was at. Okay, that was a strategic move by you. You knew Caleb had the media hype. You wanted to be the senior analyst. Okay, I see you, Cliff. You ain't slick. I see. That's cool. Then you made your way back to the NFL. What's his name? Rivera. Yeah, Rivera staff. You were now the offensive coordinator. Now you got a quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Did nobody expect Washington to be basically top? I'm gonna give him a 10. I ain't gonna get too much media hype. I'm gonna say top 10 in the league. Now you got a quarterback who can run past, win in close games. You know, I still think Jaden need a little bit more experience, but he can win in close games. Oh, now we back in the Cliff Clean. I keep saying that dude. Cliff all of a sudden he back in head coach talk. Like, so do you think it was a strategic move by him to go to USC? Then you really lucked up on Jaden Daniels. And all of a sudden you back in the head coach talk. But we already seen what you did for 3 years. Cause that Arizona team was like, you remember how LA started getting all them old vets like Clay Matthews and all them old heads. That's how the Cardinals when they was getting JJ Watt, Zach Ertz, Kyle Murray, the receiver for Texas. I can't remember his name right now. Basically, the team was not trash. You just didn't have a scheme that fit them. So do you believe when he go to a because you know how politics work, he gonna get another head coach position. Do you believe he gonna mess that team up too? Or do you think he need to go to a team that's subpar where he can build up so we can actually see if he can do it? What you think?
You talking about Kingsbury?
Yeah, that dude.
So yeah, that dude. I mean, it was a smart move on his part to take the jobs that were available, go back down to college, and then after a year, I think it was, move up to Washington. It was definitely smart on his part. I don't think it's changed anything as far as, what his prospects are. We see retreads in the NFL. It's going to happen. We've seen head coaches, Dan Quinn right now, his head coach is a retread. Like we've seen coaches go back down the coordinating, go back down to college, have success, and then they're given another shot. And look, as much as I'm not a fan of retreads, it's not that it hasn't ever worked out in the past. I mean, we've seen it happen where maybe Andy Reid is a great example. He successful in the Eagles for a long, long time, but the 10-year ended very, very badly. And never was able to win a Super Bowl. And then he goes to the Chiefs. He's still a very good coach, gets his different circumstances, gets the right quarterback, and then all of a sudden he's going to be revered as one of the best coaches of all time when it's all said and done. So we've seen it happen in the past. Do I think that's Cliff Kingsbury? No, I don't think that's Cliff Kingsbury because, again, his offense at the end of the day is a simplified version of I just lost it. I just had it in my head too. But basically, it's a simplified version of run and gun from back in the day. And when you only have the one read and you're using RPO action constantly to be your staple for running backs out of the shotgun, that's something the defenses can very easily adjust to over time. And in the first year, I think because he's been out of the NFL and kind of caught teams off guard, how good Jano Daniels wound up being this season, that I think he caught people off guard for this year. I'll be very curious to see what we see next season. Again, that's kind of why I pointed out earlier, if I am Kingsbury and I truly do want to be a head coach again, then this is the season I'm trying to do it, because I'm not trying to wait till next year to see if this is, Dane Daniels goes in a sophomore slump and if defenses adjust to my scheme, because we already know he can't really adjust very well. So is he going to get a shot? Probably. If the Commanders keep playing like this, if Jaden Daniels keeps playing like this, he's probably going to get another shot. Do I think he's going to do better the second time around? I haven't seen anything that would tell me that.
I feel you on that. All right, that's enough talk about Cliff. We not ESPN over here. We ain't about to be running stories in the ground, 100 years in the ground. I do not like that. But all right, let's go ahead. So this what we about to show Dan's favorite team. Just like y'all know my Browns. But we talk about the 49ers today. So let me go ahead and ask you, Dan, is Brock Purdy really worth the contract extension, or is it all media hype?
Well, especially the media hype part, I think that's split now in the media. There seems to be half people who hype him up, half the people who say he's still, Mr. Irrelevant and he sucks and he shouldn't be paid. And I do think you got actually a split going on right now. Look, the whole thing about Purdy, let's go back to last season, right? Where he had a tremendous season, numbers off the charts, one of the most efficient quarterbacks we've ever seen in NFL history. And everyone kept saying, like, well, it's the scheme, it's the players, it's everything else. So, okay. So this year, let's fast forward to this year. Didn't have the players, right? Christian McCaffrey played 2.5 games this year. Brandon Ayuk, they lost in week 7. Deebo Samuel looks like he's fallen off a cliff. The offensive line, Trent Williams has only played half the games this season. So, and the offensive line is a big one because without Trent Williams, they're only an average offensive line with Trent Williams. Without Trent Williams, they're a subpar. I mean, like we're talking bottom third in the NFL offensive line. So he had all those weapons taken away. Pretty much he's had George Kittle and the surprise of Juwan Jennings this season because no one thought Juwan Jennings was this good until this year. And even then, it might be an aberration. We'll see. And even with that, he's still 8th in passing yards despite being 16th in pass attempts. He's 3rd in yards per pass attempt. He's 7th in QBR. So you take all these weapons away, and we add in the fact that Kyle Shanahan, who I'm going to get into a little bit in your next question too, did not stick to his principles of his system this season. So the scheme wasn't as good. The players weren't as good. And everyone's saying this is a bad year from Brock Purdy. And I'm like, when you look at it from an efficiency standpoint, he's still one of the top 10 quarterbacks in efficiency. So I don't understand the people who want to use this season to jump on him. I don't understand the people who don't look at this season and say, okay, he didn't have his weapons. He didn't have his system. He was under the gun. He was expected to carry the offense as best as he could. And just they've had troubles in the red zone. But despite that, the 49ers team offensively are 5th in yards. Like, so he did his job. He still played like a top 10 quarterback, even with not having everything right up around him. So I don't think it's hype. I think this is a true legitimate starting quarterback. Now, is he Josh Allen? Is he Patrick Mahomes? Is he Joe Burrow? No, he's not the elite caliber guys. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Justin Herbert. But he's that tier right below those guys where you're an above average franchise level quarterback who should be the guy moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So if he was to get replaced today, would you be mad or would you think it was time? Brock Purdy.
If he would be replaced, I mean, who are you going to replace him with? I mean, Sam Darnold's going to stay in Minnesota. Kirk Cousins is washed. It's very, very clear that he's done. Aaron Rodgers is washed. There's no quarterbacks. There's only 2 quarterbacks that are worth drafting this upcoming year. They're both going to go in the top 10. So who would you replace them with? I think that would be the big question here. You have to ask yourself, even beyond the fact that he's played more than well enough to be the guy, number one, first and foremost. But when you're a team who's talking about, do you pay a quarterback? Do you move in a different direction? No matter what team you are, you have to ask yourself, what is your pivot option? And if your pivot option is nothing, well, then you have your answer.
Well, I'm seeing the 49ers had 2 back-to-back good seasons. They was number 1 in division both times. A 12-win season and 13-win season to now. Even though I've been saying all season that the NFC West was super competitive. Well, it's competitive for the division point, but not really because the teams should be better than what they're doing. They're now 6-10. So do you believe y'all be number 1? But the funny part is the Rams are also 6-10. They got them number 1. I don't know if that's some politics NFL doing what, but do you believe? I mean, they're 10-6. My bad. Do you believe the 49ers will be able to bounce back next season? Or you think if your top players like Fred Warner, Kittle, what's the lineman name?
Trent Williams.
Yeah, Trent Williams. I probably said when you have a team like the 49ers, she's about to go through this too. Even though they're 15-1, when teams keep making it to a Super Bowl every year, and we know how players' egos work, and when it comes to contract situations, we know their agents gonna want top dollar. So that's why I kept saying, like, I said it's like a year ago, everybody saying I was crazy. The more a big market team like San Francisco, the more the team keep winning. You got a new stadium, Christian McCaffrey coming in. So you got a lot of big name players. Players are gonna want more money. We already know money dry up real quick when it comes to contracts. Now it's like all your good guys like George Kittle and them. A lot of people don't know they've been in the league like 9-10 years. It seems like they just got there. They're getting more older. So now you need the young guys to become the vets or become the greats, like Fred, like Well, Fred Warner go down, I don't see a secondary San Francisco making it. When George Kittle go down, yeah, you got Debo now, but he makes up like the Kelsey of the team. He get the yards that you need to keep the ball moving down the field. Now I know y'all have stacked receivers, but let's say Debo was to go down too. Can Brock Purdy still carry that team? I think that's what San Francisco 49ers looking at. Like, okay, you're like the face of the new generation for our team going down the line. If all these vets that I just mentioned go down, will you be able to carry the team? You think he'll be able to carry them?
I think what we saw this year, that's what I laid out. He played as a top 10 quarterback this season with, again, no Ayuk, no Christian McCaffrey. Trent Williams only half the games. And Debo's been a non-factor. I mean, since week 2, Debo's is fallen off a cliff. Like, I think the 49ers are actually looking for reasons to move on from Debo Samuel next season anyway. So I think we have our answers that he played very well. The issue, if you want to look at it record-wise, the 49ers are 6-10. That's not on him. The defense was also terrible, also injured. It wasn't just the offensive side of the ball. We saw Nick Bosa miss 3 games. Javon Hargrave got knocked out for the season in week 2. Hufanga was only able to play 3.5 games. Dre Greenlaw was only able to play 1.5 games. So it wasn't just the offensive side of the ball. We saw this team get detrimented. And I know people were, starting to be like, oh, we're tired of hearing about every player, every team has injuries to deal with throughout the season. That's true. No team had as many key players injured on both sides of the ball as San Francisco this year. And that's why it keeps getting brought up. And when it comes to salary cap, if you're asking yourself, like, okay, well, if you pay Brock Purdy, then, what are you going to be able to do to be able to field the team around him? Well, this is where people have a gross misunderstanding about how the salary cap works. Look at Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence. Okay, Tua got 53 annually, and Trevor got 55 annually. Now, Tua Tagovailoa this year only had a cap hit of $9 million. He's only going to have a cap hit of 39 in 2025, and he's only going to have finally in 2026 is when he's going to have a cap hit of 56, and then they have an out after 2026 when they can renegotiate. Trevor Lawrence, he had a 5-year deal with $55 million annually, but he was only a $15 million cap hit this season. 17 2025, 24 in 2026, 34 in 2027, and 47 in 2028 with a potential out after that. So he's never even going to hit $50 million in cap hit at any point in his contract. Now that comes from, is the owner willing to pay the guaranteed money up front? Jed York has done nothing but that. You mentioned, the 49er players like Chris McCaffrey and Trent Williams. Well, they got their contracts restructured. A large part of their contracts are upfront money guaranteed, paid out by the owner. So their cap hits are down. Javon Hargrave, his cap hit's going to be down after they restructured his deal. So when you look at it all, yes, they're going to have, it's probably like, so let's say they sign Brock Purdy to a $55 million annual average contract. It probably would not be until 2027, 2028 by the time that cap hit would actually balloon close to or at $50 million. So it gives you a 2-year window still where you'll be able to sign free agents, still be aggressive while having Brock Purdy on this new contract. And the hope is that in that meantime, you're drafting well to get the cheap labor of the rookies, right? Because that's part of it too. As the Chiefs are able to do that, like they let go of Ladarius Sneed last year, but because they had McDuffie and they had some young guys coming up behind him who were cheaper but still good, they were able to kind of swallow that hit and still be one of the top secondaries in the NFL. So you still need to draft well. I'm not saying that, but they're in a golden position to be able to move forward with paying Purdy and still being able to put a Super Bowl caliber team around him.
Okay. Well, this next question, we still going down the 49ers train. The next question basically is saying, what went wrong with the 49ers this season? Can they bounce back next year? You said something about what's the hit? Shanahan. Well, go ahead, go in on him. What's wrong with him?
Well, so the two biggest issues that the 49ers had this season was the injuries, of course, and then Shanahan. So this year, he had the least amount of play action calls this year than he has had any year that he's been a head coach of the San Francisco 49ers in his tenure. Motion was down a little bit, but he was still one of the highest motion coaches in the league. However, it was a lot of what I call empty motion, where it's just eye candy, right? The teams will do this. It seems like McDaniel do this a lot. A lot of teams that use the heavy motion, they'll sometimes motion just for eye candy, not necessarily to set that player up on the play, but to try to distract the defense from a misdirection on the other side. The thing is that works sometimes, but only when you have to respect the motion of setting up that player who's in motion to get the ball there. There was a lot of empty motion where San Francisco was not setting that player up to get that little cheat code, because that's what motion is. It's a cheat code. It gives the player the opportunity to get a head start running to the line of scrimmage when they snap the ball. And while the defensive player is kind of standing still a little bit, that's what gives him the edge, right? He's getting a head start, in other words. So when you're doing a lot of empty motion and you're not sticking to your principles on play action and bootlegging, this just wasn't the same offense. Shanahan, I think, more so than anybody else on the team, you want to talk about Super Bowl hangover, I think he was so haunted by what happened in that Super Bowl against Kansas City because of the way they played man and took away a lot of the concepts that he wanted to do, that I feel like he took this entire year to prove that he could beat that scheme. And anytime anybody played man, he wanted to. That's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall. That's why they wanted to put more of an emphasis on the wide receivers this season, is that they wanted to prove that they could just out scheme the man-to-man stuff, because they're a great team yards after the catch, which comes primarily against zone and his concepts, the way they set it up. So I think he spent this whole year trying to beat the Chiefs from last season and just got in his head. So Shanahan just has to get back to his basics, his principles of what he does. And then on top of it, look, San Francisco is going to be in last place, right? They've already, regardless whether they beat Arizona or not on Sunday, they've already locked up last place. So they're going to get a last place schedule next season. So if you have a team that does have that talent, who is getting healthier, who gets a last place schedule going into next year, a much easier road, everything kind of lines up where they should be able to bounce back. And Shanahan, frankly, and the 49ers have been an every other year type of team for the most part since he's taken over the team.
I ain't gonna lie, I ain't been watching much of San Fran. Don't he still run the ball like the West Coast offense, or he on that pass and stuff now? Like, is he trying to do the like what kind of offense Shanahan be running now? Because I know he was always the West Coast run ball. Like, so is he what he doing now?
No, he's still doing that. I mean, if you look at it, like I said, Brock Purdy was 16th in pass attempts among qualified quarterbacks. They're still, I think, as a team, they were still in the top 10. And run. Actually, they're in top 5, in run plays this year. So this is still a run first West Coast concept type team, just like his dad used to run. Now, they tried to put a little bit more emphasis on the outside passing attack this season as far as where they attack the ball with the concepts. It just didn't work out as well, especially when they lost Brandon Ayuk for the year. So there were some things he tried to do a little bit differently. The biggest thing is that he got away from his principles on non-empty motion and play action. But ultimately, as far as the numbers go, you're going to see that San Francisco was in the top 5 in rushing attempts, and they were amongst the bottom half in passing attempts, which is typically where a Shanahan team has been.
That's because I knew that was going to happen when they gave Debo that new contract. I'm like, watch them be passing the ball more. That's because they got to, because you can't give him that big contract and not be throwing the balls home. Or we not about to act like Debo is like Jerry Rice, though. I think the media stopped doing that. Like, he good, but come on now. Y'all be trying to pay this dude Jerry Rice. Like, just name me one Jerry Rice that he done broke yet. Like, come on now. Like, just stop. But I get it. I know. I'll be going there with media, because the NFL media, man, like, that's why the views is going down. Y'all can try to act like views going up. Views actually going down, just like the NBA. But, yeah, so a little bit more 49ers talk. How many picks y'all got in this upcoming draft, if you know?
I believe they have 10 picks coming up in this draft. And so they have a good amount of picks. And if they lose to Arizona like they should, then they should be in the top 10 in the first round.
10th pick. Do you know what? Do you think y'all gonna use all 10, or them gonna be the time when y'all trading Debo and Fred Warner? Cause I see some talk about trading Fred Warner, Nick. You think not Nick Bosa? You think this gonna be a time where y'all be trading, or y'all think y'all about to use all 10?
Well, I can tell you for one, Fred Warner ain't going anywhere. That's bathroom fodder. But
Yeah.
If they can trade Debo, they would. Here's the problem with trading Debo. Okay, since they restructured his contract before the season, and it surprised me that they did. They made it a lot more difficult to be able to move Debo. And I thought for sure that was something they were going to want to do this offseason, even before he had the disappointing year. I thought that was something they were going to do this offseason because they had just paid Brandon Ayuk. They had just drafted Ricky Pearsall. And if anything, George Kittle's coming up on the last year of his deal. He's going to want a new contract. If anything, you want to keep George Kittle, not Deebo Samuel, moving forward. So I thought for sure they want to move on from Deebo Samuel, but they made it a lot harder for themselves when they restructured it. So basically, they're in the situation where if they want to trade Deebo before June 1st, they're going to have to eat a good portion of that contract in order to make it happen, because there's a couple of things. One, his market's not going to be that big. Deebo Samuel's a very unique type of player. So if you're going to trade for Deebo, it has to be a team who's willing to use him in that unique way. Because if you just try to trade him and think that he's just going to line up at wide receiver and win all the time, he's not. It's never been who he was. He's a playmaker who you use as a chess piece, not a guy who can win consistently when you just line him up on the outside. It's never been his game. So you were talking about there's only a few places in which he could go. I think the Commanders, Carolina are a couple teams that make sense. But again, if San Francisco wants to trade him before the draft, they're going to have to eat a significant part of that salary or wait till post June 1st to make the move then. But then at that point, his market is going to be even less valuable, right? So I think they're in a bit of a conundrum on how they move on from Deebo, if they can even move on from Deebo in a way that makes sense. As far as using all the draft picks go, so last year they actually did use all their draft picks. The years before, typically what they'll do is they'll trade a couple for the following year. They're not a team that moves up very often. Maybe you might see a move up in the 4th round, 3rd round, let that mid-round territory. You might see them move up then, but you're not going to see them move up significantly, like say in the 1st round, 2nd round. So they're typically a team that sits back, and if anything, they trade away their draft picks to accrue more for the following season. So I think of their 10, I think it's a very good bet they use a minimum of 8. Maybe all 10, but a minimum of 8, maybe a couple of draft picks they trade away.
So you sure you don't see them picking up no quarterback?
No. They're gonna pay Purdy. That's done for. They're gonna pay Purdy. I think they could they could very easily bring back Brandon Allen, the 3rd string. I think they could easily bring back Josh Dobbs too. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in Kirk Cousins at $1 million to play backup. I wouldn't be surprised about that either. But Purdy's gonna be the guy moving forward. They're not gonna pick up a quarterback.
You think Atlanta really gonna get rid of Kirk Cousins?
Say that again. Sorry.
Atlanta.
Oh, they've already announced that they're going to be cutting Kirk Cousins as soon as the season's over, or come February. So that's already been announced. That's what they're going to do. They're going to eat that contract. They're moving on with Michael Penix, and I don't blame him. I mean, right? He's 35 years old, going to be 36, coming off an Achilles. He looked done. I mean, he looked completely and utterly done. Reminiscent of Matt Ryan, if you will, at the end of his career, where I know he had an Achilles injury, but his shoulder looks like it's gone. And part of that comes from your footwork too. When you don't have the ability to plant and be able to power through from your legs to your hips, you lose some of that arm strength. And that's a lot of what I saw out of Kirk Cousins this past season. Now, could he get it back being a year removed from the Achilles injury? Potentially. I mean, that might help, but also because he's already going to be 36, he's already going to be older, it does become even harder to be able to come back from an injury like that, even if it's a year removed. So, I mean, they've already announced they're going to be moving on from Atlanta. Kirk Cousins will be a free agent coming this offseason.
He's going to be retiring is what he's going to be doing this offseason.
Well, he's not going to retire, because here's the thing. It's kind of similar to the Russell Wilson situation from last year. Atlanta, regardless of what happens here, is going to be paying Kirk Cousins $40+ million for next season, guaranteed. So basically what's going to happen is he's going to be available. He's going to get paid that money regardless Like, even if he didn't sign with the team, he'd be getting paid that money from Atlanta, but he'll be able to play with the team and sign for $1 million like Russell Wilson did this year with Pittsburgh. It's a very similar situation.
They moving out from Penix already. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, Penix is their guy. He started the last 2 weeks. He's going to start again this week.
Oh, okay. It's like you said they was getting rid of him too.
Oh, no. Just Kirk Cousins.
So back on point. There's 2 players. I'm glad you up here. It's 2 players I want to know about. What happened with Chase Young and what's that black quarterback y'all got? What's his name? Lance? Was it Trey Lance?
Oh, yeah.
Them two. Yeah, what happened to them two? Chase Young and Lance.
Chase Young, with him, it's real simple. Even going back to Ohio State, he was never a guy who showed a ton of effort when playing the run. Mm-hmm. And that carried over into the NFL. It carried over into Washington. It was a big issue for San Francisco in the playoffs. And it continued to be an issue when he signed with the New Orleans Saints this past year, too. He's a very talented pass rusher, but he does not show the effort against the run that you need to have to actually be a great defensive end, which he has the talent to be if he was willing to do that. But he hasn't, and if he hasn't done it at this point in his career, which, he's more than halfway through, frankly, at this point, it's not going to happen. So that was the deal with Chase Young. With Trey Lance, I was not a fan of Trey Lance coming out of the draft. I actually, not that this maybe would have been any better, but I was actually hoping we were going to draft Mac Jones. I thought he fit the system a lot better, especially that West Coast system where it's more about, you kind of see with Purdy, it's more about being able to go through your progressions and accurately make decisions. It's not necessarily about having the most physical talent in the world. And with Trey Lance, I think people fell in love with the arm strength and fell in love with the mobility, but didn't take in the factor of where does he actually stack up in those two things. Like, his arm strength was good, but not great. His mobility was good, but not great. I mean, we're talking about a guy who ran a 4.6. So you're not on the level of a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, a Jaden Daniels, a Josh Allen. Like, he's not that mobile. He's a little bit less than those guys. The other thing was that coming out of North Dakota, you're playing for a smaller school against less competition, and he didn't even dominate the competition in less competition. He wasn't ever an accurate quarterback in college. He only had 1 season that he played in college fully, and that was about it. So there was a lot of things about Trey Lance I didn't like. I was pissed off when we made the pick. I was so thankful when we actually fell into Brock Purdy as a result because we got lucky. Frankly, when a team makes that decision, that draft capital on a quarterback who busts out completely horribly, by the way. I mean, people do not, because of the Purdy situation, because the 49ers have been successful, they do not spend enough time underscoring how badly Trey Lance was a bust. I mean, we're talking all-time bust here. The guy had 5 starts and flamed out terribly in those 5 starts and then never got a shot again, basically. So with Trey Lance, he doesn't go through his progressions. He's not an accurate quarterback. And the 2 things he's supposed to be touted for, his arm and his mobility, are not an elite level.
Okay. I just want to know what happened to Chase Young and Trey Lance. Y'all had them. It's like a year or 2 went by. Bam, they just disappeared. But I don't know what Trey Lance said, but Chase Young, he down in New Orleans. We ain't gonna speak on it. So let's go ahead and move on. Since we talked so much about the draft, hold up. Who would the Patriots supposed to be rumored to have the number 1 pick? Thinking they about to get Brady. I just had to say that. Who you think? Let's start with the Patriots first before we get to the other team over there. If the Patriots get the number 1 pick, what you think they gonna do with it? You think they gonna trade it, which they not gonna do, or who you think they'll take? Because obviously they're picking up a quarterback. So who you think they're gonna pick up?
Well, I don't know why they would pick up a quarterback. Drake May's the guy. Drake May's definitely the guy. I think they know. He is that dude. He has time and time again over the past few weeks made plays with literally nothing. I mean, you're talking about the worst offensive line in football, the worst supporting cast in football, and yet he has, amongst qualified quarterback, the best yards per carry average we've ever seen a quarterback have, and I see him make throws time and time again. He's that dude. If you want, everyone keeps talking about we want to find Josh Allen 2.0. New England has found Josh Allen 2.0 in Drake May. So it's not going to be a quarterback. And because they don't need the quarterback, they can trade away that pick. I think ideally the best thing they could do if they do wind up with the number 1 pick after this weekend is trade that pick away. For somebody who needs the, Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward, whichever one that they decide that they want to have more, that would be the best move that they would do. If they, for some reason, can't find a deal that they like to trade that number 1 pick away, I think you're either looking at a reach at offensive line a little bit. There's a couple of good tackles that are going to go probably in the top 10, top 15. There's not a bona fide tackle this year, though, that should be a top 5 pick without question. So if you do take a tackle at number 1, it's going to be a little bit of a reach. My assessment is that they should, if they had to stick at number 1, and that's not the ideal situation again, but if they had to, it would be McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. That would be the move that they go, because right now you have 2 things that you have to do. You have to protect Drake May. You have to get him weapons. So you need one of those 2 things. I think at that pick, that would be the way to go, because McMillan's more of a top pick talent, if you will, than necessarily the offensive lineman that'll be available. So I think that's the way they would go. But ideally, they're trading that pick away.
Would you be shocked if they took a defensive player?
Wouldn't be shocked. Mason Graham does make some sense with that defense if they wanted to go in that direction, because I do think he could play defensive end in a 3-4 that they do play. So I wouldn't be shocked. Will Anderson comes to mind. I know people are hyping up Travis Hunter to go. And, would I be shocked if they took Travis Hunter? No, I wouldn't be shocked if they took Travis Hunter. Do I think it would be a mistake? Yeah, I think it would be a mistake. So the thing about Travis Hunter is that he's a special talent. He definitely is a special talent. Can play wide receiver and cornerback. But the problem I have is that in the NFL, he's going to have to favor one over the other. You can't do both and be at the top level in your craft doing both in the NFL. You're going to have to favor one over the other. And maybe you do one, specialty situation, and you're mostly a wide receiver or a cornerback, whichever one he decides to be. And if you, of the 2, I think he would, even though I think he's a better cornerback than he is a wide receiver, I think he'd probably choose wide receiver because the amount of money that he can make as a wide receiver is more than the potential amount of money he would probably make as a cornerback, just on average. But which Travis Hunter, so because of that, I don't think Travis Hunter, I don't have him great as a top wide receiver. I also don't, if you just do his profile as a cornerback, I don't have him as graded as a top cornerback either. I have Will Anderson as a top cornerback. I have McMillan as a top wide receiver. So I think Travis Hunter would be a mistake. Would I be surprised if they did it because of how much hype is around him and he can do it all? No, I wouldn't be shocked if that was a move that they made either.
I said no because I don't want him playing for the Patriots. I know you about to say all that. Okay, so you don't think he could be like this example? I'm not saying he gonna be these dudes. Like a Deion was, where Deion sometimes would play receiver, but he was known as a kick returner, return specialist and corner. Or Devin Hester with these are people I'm throwing out so when he could be a average receiver, but he return specialist because he can return the ball. I don't know. I seen a few highlights. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't really watched a full Colorado game. So do you believe he want to be good, or you on one side more than the other, or you believe he has no choice but to play one side of the ball?
I think if he was smart and played to what I believe his strengths are, he would follow Deion Sanders' path, where he would focus primarily on being a corner. I think that's what he's the best at, while being able, just like Deion was, being able a situational playmaker as a wide receiver, because Deion did that in his days too. He was a situational wide receiver, and he could also be a returner as well. I think if he wanted to play to his strengths, that's what he would do. I don't know if he's going to do that because on average, again, wide receivers make more than cornerbacks do in the NFL. So I don't know that's definitely what he wants to do. So I think a part of it is that he can be situational on and play both sides of the ball, but he's going to have to focus primarily on one of those things in order to actually be the elite level player that he's going to probably be drafted as, because he's probably going to be drafted as a top 5 pick, and you need to be an elite level player in order to give back the investment on that draft capital. He's going to have to kind of choose one of the focus on. And I think that would be the smartest move for him to go. If it's the other way around, it's a little bit harder. Like, it's harder for guys who are focused at wide receiver to also then play situational cornerback and be decent at it. I mean, the only guy I can even really think of was Troy Brown for the Patriots back in the day, who was able to kind of do that to some degree. But again, he wasn't like, you're not going to play full time, both sides of the ball in the NFL. It's not going to happen. No one is conditioned enough to be able to do it. It's too much of a physical sport. You can't do it. So you're going to have to pick one or the other.
I get that. I mean, he is the Heisman, so I guess wherever Travis Hunter go, either he gonna have to show or improve. We don't see a few Heisman, like your boy Baker. He's straight bust in the league, but we ain't gonna speak on that. Let's go ahead and move on. The other team over that way, we got the Jets. This old head, 90-year-old man, Rex Ryan, in talks of being the head coach. I'm going to let you go first. I got a few things I'm going to say, but what you feel about 90-year-old Rex Ryan want to be the head coach for the Jets again?
You know, this is something that we've seen crazy stories in the NFL like this come out, especially this time of the year all the time when, there's going to be a big coaching carousel. And, what old retread coach has been in the media for a long time who wants to try to come back. The funny thing about this to me is that with the Jets, because they're a Looney Tune organization to begin with, is that I can't rule it out from it being a legitimate possibility that it actually happens. And from some senses, it kind of makes sense, if you squint a little bit. It makes sense from a situation of Rex Ryan, what you're going to get, what you're going to get, you're going to get an identity. And the biggest problem the Jets have right now is that they do not have an identity from the top down as an organization. So I think with the whole Rex Ryan thing, whether it's actually Rex Ryan or not, I think the bigger point is that the Jets are trying to bring in somebody that they know what they're going to get from a culture perspective, what they're going to get from a leader perspective, and that they know that they're going to bring in somebody who has a predetermined identity to the team. I think that's kind of what it lays out. But as far as the Rex Ryan of it all, if it's actually him, I mean, like I said, it's the Jets. I can't roll it out as just being fodder on the internet, but it would be hilarious.
They are type to do that too. I don't put nothing past them, man. I seen that. I'm like, yo, they about to do that. They think this about to be the LT, LaDainian Tomlinson era, Mark Sanchez. I can't even say half of them defensive players they had back then. This is not about to be it. The top defensive player. See, right, that 2010, 2012 era, that was more of a, we gonna put like the Rams just did a few years ago. We're going to get a bunch of old head midnight. They be either former big names or they're like players that was behind the big names. So somehow they still got a name to them. We're going to get players like that, like Byron Scott and all them. We're going to put them on one team, right? So we know LT and those at the end of their careers by that time. And we're going to try and win the Super Bowl. That is not about to happen. Rex Ryan is not about to come in the league. Because, see, Rex Ryan knew them dudes. Because he was coaching them and some of them he played against. So, he already had a relationship. Rex Ryan do not have a relationship with these new players. Like, yeah, they know him, but he's not going to be able to post them. We know how they do. He's not going to be able to get them come to the team. The top offensive players is not about to put their contract. Because it's all about money now. They're not about to put their money endorsements online and play for the Jets. They're just not about to do it. The Jets is a literal, we either build from the draft team or we're done. Like the Browns had to do, but they trash now. Anyway, they either we gonna build from the draft or we're done. Like one of them type teams where we can go get us like a Michael Vick right now if he was still in the league. We gonna get Lamar Jackson. You're not going to get Lamar Jackson. No, unless you pay him like $200 million guaranteed contract. You're not going to get a type player like that. So, let's say they were to get Rex Ryan. Do you believe he's going to be able to do that like he did in the past, or he's just going to be a big time coach they use to bring media attention to the team.
Well, the one thing about Rex Ryan when he was coaching is that the players loved him. They truly loved playing for him, and I don't think that changes because the energy that he brings, the type of personality that he is, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The defensive players love him.
Yeah.
I don't think that would, if they brought him in, I don't think that would change. I think players would like to do that. So I don't think he's a negative or a con if a player in a free agency is weighing whether or not they want to play with the Jets. I don't believe that. Now, what you do have to figure out is that in this, almost decade now with the media, has he figured out that he needs to bring in somebody to autonomously run the offense? Because if he wants to stick to what his identity was in the past, it doesn't work in today's football anymore. If you're just all defense and run only, it doesn't work. You got to be able to have a balance. You got to be able to have aggression in the passing game. Otherwise, we've seen teams like this. They might have one good year. They have a really, really dominant defense, and then that's about it. It's not really sustainable unless you have a decent passing attack. So did he learn that he needs to bring in somebody with him to autonomously run that offense, and he just stays out of it, works on the defensive side of the ball, and is just the leader in the locker room? That would be the question.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, basically. I want, like, he knew them players back then. The old heads that was coming to the team. It's like, because you've been playing against them, you coached them. You haven't coached, or you might have a relationship with these new dudes, or it was easier for him back then to have a stacked team as quickly as he did, compared to if he was to coach now for the Jets. And the way they did, what was the head coach they just had?
Robert Saleh.
Robert Saleh. The way they do, but they walked that dude up out there like he was a criminal. Anyway, and then they just fired the GMs. Like, they already got bad press with them, and a lot of New York fans are turning to the Giants. Like, they act like they ain't been doing that. Like, we know how y'all just ready to get down. So anyway, like, the Giants, even that team a bad organization. Them New York teams are just horrible. I don't know because y'all like Rat City, so y'all got rats everywhere, but we gonna talk about it. They're probably looking like he crazy. What is he talking about? Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. So you use a data analyst, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do, like, for viewers? Like, what? Explain to them, like, what's your job? Like, what you do?
Well, so a couple of things. One, a data analyst for PFF, which mostly pertains to charting college games, like charting plays, where a guy got tackled, that, what kind of play was it, man zone, things of that nature. As far as the show goes, Operation Domination, which focuses on fantasy football and betting, you're trying to find numbers that show they have a strong correlation in predictability. And you do that through, I'm not going to get into the math. The audience is going to glaze over when they try to get into the math of it. Basically, it's a model that measures how strong a statistic is in predictability towards fantasy points or towards statistics in general, like yards and touchdowns and things of that nature. So basically, we try to bring that, what jumps off the page on the model, and then present that to the audience as far as our plays and what we expect to happen, or a rough idea of what we expect to happen. At the end of the day, even as a data analyst, the goal is just to be right a little bit more than you're wrong. I mean, even the best data analyst in the world is still wrong about 45 to 43% of the time. It's very hard to have a correction. And if you have it, it's a great season, but it's very hard to have a hit rate of 60% or above. You're just trying to be right a little bit more than you're wrong, ultimately, at the end of the day, playing probabilities. So that's essentially what it boils down to.
How long you been doing it?
I've been doing that for about 3 years now. We've been doing the podcast. Well, this iteration of the podcast was our first year. I used to do MD's Fantasy Football, which was just me on my own. I did that for about 4 years. This year, I brought on a whole crew, and we joined the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So this is the first year for Operation Domination, and it was a good one.
How had the network been treating y'all? Like, how that work?
So it's good. I mean, we got a collection of other shows that came together, led by our owner Tyler Bradley and Corey Dossier, and they do a great job there. Corey kind of focuses on the technical side, getting our app and website running. Tyler works more on the business side, and they both do content in their own right. So, but it's you're stronger when you have a network, a group together where people have different roles. My role in that one, outside of the show, is director of podcasts and social media. So we all kind of work as a team together to try to build ourselves up. We were the top, not the top. We were the sponsors of the expo this past year, the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, in August. That's put together by Bob Lung, and we were the main sponsors for that, and that was very good. So we were able to kind of put our a strong hold early on there, and it's just the first year really for this network too. So it's looking good. It's doing well.
Okay, so you usually talk by yourself for like 4 years, like just you. You said before you brought on the team. So what made you finally decide I'm gonna bring in other guys? Like what made you decide that?
Most of it maybe decide that is because my responsibilities, again, joining the network, kind of grew. So there's a lot of things outside of just doing the podcast that I have to focus on. And because of that, it was much harder for me to build out a very good show, just me on my own, because I have to do all the prep, I have to do all the post editing, and then I had other responsibilities there on top of it. So it was one of the reasons I was actually looking around for a couple of years of who I would maybe want to bring on and give an opportunity to be part of the show. So this year just made sense to brought in 3 other guys. So there's 4 of us now doing the show. To take some of that workload off of me as far as the show goes, and I can kind of focus on some other responsibilities. And it also works out. You're able to bring in other personalities, bring in different segments. So there's a little bit more versatility to it as well.
I'm always looking for guests. You can have them come on here.
I'll definitely let them know, man.
All right. I guess that we basically covered everything. We went off topic. Well, I went off topic. Dan had his ether segment. We go to his diners. So let's go ahead and get the ending. Go ahead and tell them they can find you and all that.
Yeah, so you find me on social media, whether it's X or a Blue Sky at Dan Mater FF. Make sure you check out Operation Domination Football Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, or Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're available. And then on YouTube, go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network channel on YouTube. You can find our show, all the other shows on the network there as well. I know we're going to have some, not Operation Domination, but the Fantasy Sports Advice Network is going to have baseball shows coming up and stuff like that for the spring and summertime. So make sure you go ahead and check that out.
Well, that's good. Well, as y'all know, I like to bring anybody on. I don't really know what's good, but I hope to have Dan and his boys come back on in the future. This has been TJ McKinley Podcast, episode 21. We say what we want, how you want, whatever you want. And thank y'all for watching. Go ahead, like, subscribe, retweet, comment. Do what y'all go do. And thank y'all for watching.